Hi everyone, I'm Midori, and welcome again to Consent Dojo for Shibari Study, our monthly program exploring the nuances and joys and challenges of excellent consent making, because excellent consent making makes for excellent and truly hot rope bondage and Shibari experiences. For those of you who are viewing us for the first time, check out the back issues. They're good. They're really good. So in Consent Dojo, we're not going to be learning the ties and the positions. You go check out the other apps and lessons for that, 'cause they're awesome. But you're going to combine the soft skills of making and collaborating on hot rope making with consent and the ties and combining that. And I have so many amazing friends in my life to bring in to share with you who have been on the rebels and the revolutionaries of excellent sex lives and consent making. So today I am thrilled to bring in Betty Martin. Hi, Betty.
Hi, thank you. Thank you. I'm so glad to be here.
Oh my God.
Anytime with you, Midori.
Yeah. And so we are and not and aren't talking about rope bondage, because consent and challenges around consent absolutely have to do with shibari, whether it is that one is just practicing or performing, doing a photo shoot, or playing. And it is my pleasure to bring in people who many of the rope enthusiasts may not come across.
Mm-hmm.
So would you, for the viewers who are live as well as viewing later, tell us a bit about what it is that you do?
Sure. I spent a few decades as a chiropractor, and then I took a personal erotic journey of my own, and then I retired that chiropractic practice and began working as a sacred intimate or sex worker, sex coach. How I define it depends on who I'm talking to. And then I did that for a number of years. And as an outgrowth of that, I developed what I've called a wheel of consent, which is about noticing that who is doing is a different question than who it's for. And my work is mostly about touch, but there's some really interesting tie-ins, pardon the pun, to the rope, because there's really clearly someone who's doing and someone who's done to. So I developed this, wrote a book about it called The Art of Receiving and Giving, The Wheel of Consent. And now that's mostly what I do. I travel around the world teaching practitioners, mostly hands-on, hands-off practitioners, about the Wheel of Consent and how it applies in their sessions. And hence, running into Midori. Yeah. Who I have been a fangirl of since I don't know when. I'm just thrilled to be talking with you.
I've had the pleasure of attending one of your practitioners and pro intensives, and it's been really good, and being able to meet other educators and practitioners and different fields. And this, dear viewers, also applies to private play and rope practice.
Yeah.
Your book, the title again, and where do we find it?
The Art of Receiving and Giving, The Wheel of Consent. You can find it at wheelofconsentbook.com, and you can find it on Amazon and lots of other booksellers.
And you have a little free video for an introduction that people can find easily, right?
Yes. And just put my name in YouTube and all kinds of stuff will come up. Or the Wheel of Consent, but the Wheel of Consent in YouTube, and all sorts of stuff will come up.
So folks, after this, go check it out and really watch, pause, digest, watch again, pause. It takes actually a while to process this, because it's a realistic way of looking at consent and engagement
Yeah.
but in a way that we're not taught.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's also an embodied experience. I mean, you can go watch the videos and sort of try to figure it out, but I don't recommend that. I recommend that you take your hands through the experiences that they guide you through, um, because when your body feels the difference, you'll feel it. It's just like, oh, that's what she's talking about, and it'll be really clear.
So
Yeah,
for
it's
folks who
definitely a
might
somatic experience.
so for folks who might not be familiar with the term embodied or somatic, what do you mean by that?
Somatic means in the body or of the body. So when I say a somatic experience, I'm talking about an experience where it feels different inside than it did a minute ago. And so it's a felt sense. And the experiments that I guide you through are with the body, mostly with the hands. And there's something, we have these nerve endings in our hands and they go up to here and they connect, and we feel things, and um, and those connections connect to a lot of other things. So when your hands kind of wake up and you feel these differences, then other things start to make sense.
Yeah. There's a lot that we, in theory, should work, and yet when it's embodied, it doesn't.
Yeah.
And it comes out differently. And the last almost 2 years, so many of us have been in the realm of theory, and also
Mm-hmm.
many of the subscribers to Shibari Study,
Mm-hmm.
they're studying diligently. They're practicing, maybe on themselves, or maybe pillow. Maybe they're lucky enough to have somebody to practice with, but so much of the last 2 years has been quite literally disembodied.
Yeah. 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 Sadly.
Yeah,
True. Yeah.
yeah. So I took some notes on things I wanted to talk about.
Oh, good.
Yeah, on wheel of consent. Can give us the brief intro. I
Yeah.
will also put little bit of graphics in some of the social media stuff after this, but if you could give us a little
Yeah.
explanation.
Sure. Well, if my hand is going down your back, I may be touching you the way you want me to because you have asked me, or I may be touching you the way I want to because I have asked you for permission to do that. And though my hand may be doing the same thing, the difference in agreement makes a world of difference to both your experience and my experience. So the wheel of consent is about not only whose hand is where, but who it's for and the difference that that creates. So I can either do what you want or I can do what I want. Big difference, even if it looks the same. And
So,
likewise, you can do what you want or you can do what I want. Again, big difference, even though it may look the same.
we're translating this to rope and recognizing that a lot of viewers out there have a wide range of experience. Some of you all just starting off, yay. And some of you all have been doing some amazing, amazing things and high skill level. But the common take in the kink, BDSM, Shibari subculture is there's always somebody, these are the gross assumptions,
Mm-hmm.
that if I'm casting rope,
Mm-hmm.
if I'm putting the rope on you and you're receiving the rope or having the rope on your body, then it's always about what I want to do at you, which is a common assumption, no?
Yeah, that's kind of problematic, isn't it?
And why is it problematic? Because the what common assumption is, well, the person tying, the
Right.
person holding the rope, casting the rope, and topping is also engaging in dominance, and therefore it's about what I want. and some
Right.
misperception. Why is this problematic? I agree with you. I'm being devil's advocate here.
Yes. Well, it's problematic because maybe I want to, and this has actually happened, I want the experience of being tied up in a certain way. And so you have the skill. So I come over and ask you, will you tie me up this way? And you say, sure, this is how it works. And in that case, you're doing the tying, but it's for my enjoyment. And I am very thankful for that experience. Yeah.
And in that case, as the person who's doing the tying, and I might even be dominating based on the negotiation.
You're right.
But the
Yes.
larger framework of the experience is that it is centered around your request,
Mm-hmm.
and who it's for is you. That
Mm-hmm.
is not to say that I'm not having fun.
Yes, exactly. That's a really common confusion. Like, well, if I'm the one who's enjoying it, doesn't it mean it's for me? No. It's what did you agree to?
That's
And
great.
the
Yeah.
dom part too is interesting because it may be part of my request for you to dominate me, or I just want to feel what it feels like to hang like this. And so it's domination is really not in the picture at all. It's just an agreement of like, I want to see what this feels like to be suspended in this way. Will you do that? Sure. So
Yours.
the dominance is seems to me like kind of a separate part of the agreement.
Mm-hmm.
And a really important part if you want to include that. But it's not a given that that will be included.
And this is a nuance distinction that I've noticed some people, most people at the beginning have a hard time wrapping their head around, is that the dominance in agreed upon dominance or leadership in an experience does not mean that the person is always a leader or the desire is always centered upon the person dominating.
Oh yeah.
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 Now, you were talking about this model of this idea that if one person's having fun, the other person's not having fun. And that's a real transactional way of looking at it. It's a common thing.
Yeah.
And looking at
Yeah.
fun as if it's an object. Oh, here's my green
Right.
tea. But as if to say that if I have the tea and I give it to you, then
Mhm.
I no longer have tea.
Right.
As opposed to making an experience is that you have the request centered upon, and who it's for is you,
Uh-huh.
but in making an agreement, we're exponentially increasing the potential for joy.
Oh hell yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and in fact, if it's really that only one person's having fun, that would, that's kind of like square rooting the joy.
Yeah. Yeah. One person may be like, if I come over and say, Midori, will you tie me up this way? You say, sure. It may be that it's for me. It may be that it's not really what excites you, but you're happy to do it because I want it. But if you're miserable, nah, let's don't do it. Yeah, let's don't do it.
And tragically, there are plenty of situations where intimate, personal, consented upon, consent at a kind of basic sophomore level,
Yeah.
consented upon sexual or rope bondage experience may be engaged by somebody who's really not having fun, or they're
Yeah.
not engaged.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that happens unfortunately
That
way too often.
yes, I would agree with that. Rope or not.
I remember watching a thread discussion somewhere in FetLife or somewhere, the usual online places, where one person was saying that, well, consent is easy because when somebody says yes, that is a yes. And how could it be, how could the yes be qualified? Because another person was saying,
Mm,
well, a yes, there's a quality, different quality to a
mhm,
yes.
mhm,
And the other person was like, well, if there's a quality to it, then it's not really a yes. They were looking at this
mm.
absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, it, my guess is that when one person says a quality, they mean something different than what another person says as a quality. But yeah, I can say yes, if it's something that you're asking for that I'm not really into it, but I'm happy to do it because you want it and I like you and you'll do something for me some other time. And so there's a quality, if you will, to that yes. Was like, yeah, I can do that for you totally.
And it
Or
is
there may
for
be,
you.
yeah, or it may be, well, can I do that? Yeah, I can do that only for you, baby. And that's a different quality of yes. And it can also be something that I totally want to do. And hell yes, let's please do that. So you could say that those are qualities to the yes.
Hmm.
Um, and yeah, thank goodness we have those varieties, and thank goodness we can recognize those nuances. Because if if it's a yes, I want to do that, and if it's a yes, I'm willing to do that, it's helpful to notice the difference because those are important differences. Yeah, neither of them is less valuable, I don't think,
But
but it's an important difference.
they are different.
Yeah,
And so acknowledging that there's a difference in these two
yeah,
cases,
yeah.
how would that change how, say, we would approach a rope bondage scene?
Hmm. How would it change?
Yeah, how
Well,
would it
yeah.
affect the agreements, or how would it affect how we play?
Hmm. Let's try it.
Yeah. Okay. So we'll play this.
Okay.
Yeah.
So one example would be what I did earlier. I come over and say, Midori, I've always wanted to experience being tied up this way. Will you do that for me?
Hmm. Okay. That sounds fun.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'd be up for that.
Cool.
And for me, right now, I am centering it upon your
Yep.
ask.
Yep.
Um, at which point, I would be asking about. I would be assessing my skill level.
Mm-hmm.
Then I would need to ask about
Mm-hmm.
your your
Mm-hmm.
state and physical limitations,
Yep.
emotional state, uh, and because this is your ask and my happy giving,
Mm-hmm.
that the question that I would ask at this point is, how do you want to feel during and after this?
Oh, I love that question. That's a really important question. That's a really important question. I want to feel uh, relaxed and held, supported. I want to get a physical experience of a certain kind of support. And I imagine it's possible that I would cry, have kind of a relief kind of cry, not a dangerous kind of cry. Um, but I don't know that because I haven't done it yet. Yeah.
So you might want to feel relaxed and held with the possibility of a cathartic or relief
Yeah.
tears.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then I go through my head in my skill sets and the Shibari study lessons.
Yes.
And then I ask about, okay, what's what are body positions of yours that help you feel held and relaxed?
Well, I saw this picture of someone being suspended in this certain way, and it just really spoke to me. I thought, that's what I need. That's what I want. So that's kind of what I have in mind, if that is okay with you. And my right knee can't bend very far, so that's a definite limitation. Yeah.
Okay. And at this point, if we were in person, I may even have you show me the picture, and
Uh-huh.
I may even ask of you on the ground or the couch or whatever to show me the shapes that work for you.
Ah, yeah. That's
Viewers, you
beautiful.
don't just put a person in a shape. You have to, everybody is different, and not only from individual to individual, but day to day.
Yeah.
There may be days when your knee is better or worse. Your lower back's a little achy because you've been
Yeah.
online all day. So having a little bit of show me the body position that works for you. And Betty might say, oh, I thought it would work in this position, but
Yeah, that's not working. Let's try
not
again.
work. Okay. So we do a little bit of rehearsal. You show me the picture, and then I go, and I'm assessing my skill level and the lessons that I've taken and what I can actually do versus what I would like to do.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I can do this to achieve the held, relaxed, and potentially cathartic with my limited skill set. Everybody has a limited skill set.
Mm-hmm.
And here are my tools that I have. And
Mm-hmm.
here's what I'm confident in. And because I'm centering it upon your want, I want to make sure it's skills that I'm solid on.
Mm-hmm.
Because this is not about me wanting to practice a new thing.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So based on that, great. Here
Well,
are the things I can do. Yep.
let's say I'm feeling held and supported already just because you have the skill and the self-awareness to know to ask these questions. I'm like, oh, hell yeah, I'm in the right place. Yeah. Yeah.
And when feeling like that, I would think it would add to your relaxing into the actual
Oh,
scene.
yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, for viewers, if there's ever this like little yellow flag of concern, like I call it the internal dungeon monitor. If
Mm-hmm.
my internal dungeon monitor is going, oh, I have to pay attention, it's hard to let go.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So then I would make these assessments based upon what it is that you are seeking and the feelings that you want during and after the
Mm-hmm.
scene.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So that would be one way of looking at it. On the wheel, the language that you use on your wheel, what are we doing?
You would be in that dynamic, you would be serving and I would be accepting because you are taking action for my enjoyment. Yeah.
And the word serving can lead to
Can
misunderstanding, can be
yes.
loaded around
Yes.
BDSM.
Yeah,
So,
that's true.
so don't think like service, right?
Yeah, right.
Think in terms of centering upon who it's for.
Yeah.
Who it's for is for Betty. So I am serving the want, Betty's want.
Yeah.
And yeah, and so
That's the
it's
trouble
easy.
with words. They get loaded with all kinds of different meanings that we may not intend at all. Yeah.
And for folks who are first seeing the wheel of consent, they're like, huh? All right, so let's try a different one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect.
All right. So as I'm going to shift it once you approach me.
Um, hey, Midori, you want to play some rope today?
I
That's a very
do.
broad question, isn't
Yeah,
it?
yeah.
Yeah.
I do. And I am in a particular mood that
Ooh,
I haven't been
tell.
able to explore lately. So I want to feel like an evil puppet master.
Ooh, that sounds fun. And
Yeah.
tell me more about what that might look like?
So for this, I want to take possession of your body and move you the way that I want to. Of course, within your practical
Mm-hmm.
human limitations.
Mm-hmm.
But I might want to turn you into my rope bondage dolly.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. That's not, I'm interested in that. It would be kind of new for me, which is not actually true, but it would be kind of new for me. So I need to go slow enough that I can kind of track myself. And yeah.
Okay.
Does
All
that work?
right.
That still work?
Yeah, that does work. That does work. And it's a mood. I haven't done this with you.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so it might not go how I planned it.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of always true, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It is
Yeah.
always true, folks. It
Yeah.
is never going to go exactly the way you planned it.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's better.
But I mean, it sounds a little, but also sounds really fun. So yeah, I'd like to do that too.
And in this agreement that is starting, viewers, I will be doing some assessments about my skills that I've done, but I may also choose to try some new things
Mm-hmm.
that I am not sure in, or I'm just learning, because as an evil genius puppet master, I may be experimenting,
Mm-hmm.
right? So it would be, in this case, centered upon me. All right, so in the wheel of consent, where does that put us?
That puts you in the taking quadrant and me in the allowing quadrant.
Mhm.
And again, taking is a problematic word for lots of reasons, but the taking quadrant does not mean that you're stealing. It means that you are receiving the gift of access to this person's body, which they are happily giving you,
And centering it upon my want. Now,
centering it
here
upon
we
your
have a
want.
situation where you made the approach, but I turned it into centering
Mm-hmm.
it upon my mood and
Mm-hmm.
my appetites.
Mm-hmm. I'll have to say, when you said evil genius, I just like, oh, that sounds really fun.
Yes.
Too bad we're how many thousand miles apart.
Right? But soon,
Yeah,
soon.
soon.
Yeah. I'm and little tangent, but I'm looking forward to the possibility of like presenting with you and
Oh,
combining our
yes.
various
Yeah,
models.
yeah.
Yeah. So there's the wheel of consent, and for me, I've got this thing that I call the appetite grid.
Mm-hmm.
And folks, if you check out the appetite grid, I don't have a book on it yet, but I do have a lot of talks on it, and I've talked about it in my Patreon and all that. But in that grid, we also separate out moments desire of who's in
Mm-hmm.
charge of the scene and who's not, and who's
Mm-hmm.
receiving sensation and who's giving sensation, and it
Mm-hmm.
overlays so
So yeah,
beautifully.
yeah.
Yeah. So here we have two situations where Betty approached me about bottoming to my rope. And yet, by understanding whose uh, desire we're centering it upon, there were changes in
Mm-hmm.
uh, how we adjusted the skill levels. Oops, hold on, sorry. How we adjusted the skill levels, assessment, even the question of what kind of mood do you want to go to? What kind of mood do I want to go to? And
Mm-hmm.
coming into the agreement of the mood, consenting to the mood that we
Mm-hmm.
co-create.
Yeah. I also think it's interesting that in the second one, I approached you not being clear about who was going to tie.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I said, do you want to play with some rope today?
Mm-hmm.
And you and I wasn't clear about which way it was going to go either. And you took that yes, I'm interested in doing the tying. But you could have also said, yeah, you want to tie me up?
Right?
You know.
So
Yeah.
in that second situation where you approach me with openness,
Mm-hmm.
and then I make an offer that is centered upon who it's for is
Mm-hmm.
me,
Mm-hmm.
at that point, at that point, viewers, Betty still has decisions to make.
Yes.
And this is where I think a lot of people give away their rights to agency.
Yeah.
Because you asked me, and I said, yes, we have to.
Right. Right. One of the clients said to me one time, well, it once the other person said yes, it never occurred to me that I didn't have to do it. Like I just didn't know that I didn't have to go along with it. It's a good thing to notice. Yeah.
And
And I could have. So I came to you with a very open-ended question. You want to play rope today? And you took it and ran with it. Yes, you wanted to tie and you wanted to try this thing. I could have, at that point, said, well, that sounds kind of fun, but I'm actually interested in tying you. And then it would have been a whole different negotiation.
And then I'd be like, huh. And then I get to have decisions going either way.
Yeah. Yeah.
On that, what your client said about once there was an initial yes, I didn't realize I still had a no.
Yeah. Right.
That happens all too frequently.
Oh, yeah. Ropes or not. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And something I've observed, well, in the non-COVID times, I'm back home in Japan, and I do research
Mm-hmm.
and
It's very important.
research in inappropriate places. In other words, like bondage scene bars and parties.
Mm-hmm.
And the nice thing about being a sex educator is I can write it off.
Yeah.
The interesting thing, though, is when I've been to parties, and I don't mean commercial establishments, but private parties,
Mm-hmm.
kinky swingers events, bondage events, etc. There's a very different idea around consent in Japan. And I speak specifically of Japan because that's what I'm familiar with. And I also, because of that, I expand to consent in other cultures and ability for people to make agreements very different.
Mm-hmm.
Um, being cis female and just kind of coming in as not as a foreigner, because when I'm over there I'm Japanese that
Mm-hmm.
just has left the country, which gives me a certain privilege of conversation with people.
Mm.
And what I have come to learn and observed as well, and spoken with many people, that that idea of I said yes, so I have to follow through it,
Mm-hmm.
also expands to I want this thing, but if I can get this thing by doing all these other things, I'll put up with all the other things.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I've actually met many of folks, and it does tend to lean towards women that will put up with, tolerate, and endure
Mm-hmm.
so much to get that one piece of
Oh,
something
yeah.
that they want.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
consent, it's not a
I've been
consensual
there.
culture. Yeah. Could you
Yeah.
talk about that?
Oh, gosh. Well, also cis woman, mostly straight, or at least growing up years I was straight. And um, I can remember a date in college. This was a blind date. And, we got along okay. And I remember leaning up and cuddling in, and because I was just so hungry for some touch. And so the leaning in led to a certain amount of sexual play, which I wasn't really interested in, but I just wanted to be touched so bad. And I think that was kind of a theme probably for my sexuality for quite some years, actually. And I think it's a pretty common theme for cis women. Yeah.
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 And
I don't know, it's probably for men too, but
it's probably a common theme for, if in a dyad, two people, that whichever one has the less entitlement or agency, the power dynamic before. Yeah. Now, oftentimes we talk about this from the ambiguity of consent and doing that which we tolerate on the bottoming side, but I also have an example on the topping side. But in your wheel of consent, where does this go in this situation that you illustrate, which has complete rope equivalency?
I think in this case, it was mostly he was mostly doing, I was mostly done to. Not entirely, but for the most part, because it was 1965, so that's the way it was then. And so I was trying to be in the accepting quadrant, having him do things to me that I wanted, but I ended up kind of in the murky, muddy zone of allowing, where, oh, it's kind of okay, I guess. It's not really okay, but it's okay enough. That place where it's not really a no, but it's not really a yes, because it's just kind of murky, which is a common place for everybody. Yeah.
And viewers, when you see the wheel of consent, there's this area outside of it.
Yes.
That I want you to really pay attention to, and pay attention to from a somatic or in your gut and body level.
Yeah. What's outside of it is the same dynamic can happen, but without agreement or without consent. So that's where, if you're in the taking quadrant and you're feeling up your partner or tying them up in some way that you want with their agreement, then they're giving you this gift of access to them. But the same dynamic could happen without the agreement, and that's groping and assault and all kinds of horrible things. Yeah.
Yep. I wanted to give the example of the topping side.
Yes. Yeah.
And I was at a long weekend long rope and kink and BDSM event, and there was this young. They themselves were not young on the earth years, but they were young and new to the kink and shibari subculture. I think many years ago, and that point they were she. I think. Let's just go with she, because it really doesn't matter. It matters a little bit, but the specific person doesn't matter, because I've seen this play out. So at the end of one of the party nights, I'm strolling through the play area, and I see her in the corner, and she looks a little distressed. And I walk over and say, "Hey, how's it going?" And she's actually crying. What's going on? And turns out she had, in the course of a day, 7 scenes in which she talked for 7 scenes. And she was exhausted and spent. And I'm like, honey, 7 scenes? 7 scenes? and is this what you wanted to do? And she's saying, but people ask me, and I thought that's what I'm supposed to do, because I'm topping and I'm rigging, and that's what I'm supposed to do. I'm like,
yeah.
And she assumed the ask must be met with a yes, and that doing rope, applying rope, meant that she would be in control, or that she would be also automatically satisfied because she was doing the tying.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So then the question that I asked was, is that really what you wanted? And she didn't answer it in a moment, but I could see that the wheels were turning. Leads me to the question of, how do we know what we really want? And I'm curious about, well, I'm going to combine a couple things here. And we've talked a little about this before. What's the difference between submitting or bottoming versus being a doormat? And the difference between dominating or perpetrating? Let's go with that one, because there is a difference, viewers, between submitting and being a doormat. I mean, non-consensual, not erotic humiliation, consensual kind. But the doormat versus submission, and domination versus perpetrating.
Well, the difference is consent, or really probably a better word is agreement. And dang, it is so easy to let yourself get walked over, not because you want to, or not even necessarily because the other person is evil, but because you just don't know how to say no. And that seems to be pretty universal. I mean, how many of us have trouble saying no to all kinds of things that people ask us for inside the rope dojo and outside the rope dojo? So, yeah, it's just so bloody easy. So don't think that if you have neglected to say no that you're broken. No, you're human. So I think there's one question, which is kind of the technicality of what's the difference, and I think it's the agreement making. And then there's also the feeling of it. It just feels different. When I can surrender, I can only surrender, or you said submit. I use those words a little differently, but I'm going to go surrender for the moment. When I surrender, I'm surrendering by choice, and it requires a choice. If I don't have a choice, I'm not surrendering. I'm being I'm being a doormat, and to really to experience the joy of surrender, the like, oh, that's so sweet, surrender. I have to know that I have a choice about it, and I have to set some limits and boundaries and be clear about it. And what I've found is that when I trust myself to speak up for myself, that is what lets me surrender, because I stop worrying about what you might do. And in order to trust myself, I first have to become trustworthy. I talk about this a fair bit in the book. When I gain the skills to speak up for myself and say, "Oh, that's too tight," or "Ouch, that hurts," or "Stop now," or "I'm not into that," or when I learn how to trust myself, when I learn the skills to speak up for myself, I become trustworthy, and then I will automatically trust myself. And then I can relax and enjoy myself because I'm not worrying about what you might try, because I know that I could say no.
Coming to trust oneself
Yeah.
is, and for many of us, a hugely challenging obstacle.
Yeah.
And yeah, the trusting oneself. I
think it's because we got it backwards.
Mhm.
I think we think, oh, I should trust myself, or oh, I should trust my other person, or no, if you don't have the skills to be trustworthy, you are very wise not to trust yourself. So the the task is to become trustworthy. And then the trusting yourself will follow automatically. I think that's why people often struggle with trusting themselves. Well, you better not trust yourself if you don't have the skill. That's really smart, you know? Yeah.
I really like your use of agreement instead of just the straight up consent, because the impression in my head is so often consent is transactional. You have a thing, I'll
Yeah.
take it.
Yeah.
I have a thing, I'll give it.
Yeah.
And there's something about it that is seemingly absolute and unidirectional, whereas an agreement requires a collaboration.
Yes.
And that language of making agreement versus consent. I've been shifting to talking about consent making instead of consent
Yeah.
taking and consent giving.
Yeah. Yeah. I totally agree.
Yeah. Let's see. Oh, and the next half of it is, how does one know the difference if one is dominating or perpetrating? Because I talk to many people who love topping, love casting rope, and are conscientious enough to question their motivation on are they perpetrating or are they topping? Are they rigging or exploiting? And questioning themselves around that. Yeah.
That's harder, I think.
I so appreciate the people who do question themselves.
Oh, hell yeah.
And yet that can also give pause to playing as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah. Yeah. That seems much harder. Because I imagine, I'm not sure this is true, but I think it's probably true, that if you are perpetrating, it's very likely that you don't realize you are. And so the difference between doming and perpetrating requires some degree of self-awareness. I mean, obviously, agreement making skills, consent making skills, of course, but you can perpetrate even if the person said yes, if you are not noticing that they stop breathing, they become stiff, they're holding their breath, they're flinching, they're, all these kinds of body signals. Or if you are ignoring your gut signal that says, this doesn't feel right, you know. And of course, if you're just bowling right over someone's no, of course, that's pretty awful. But I think it takes some degree of personal awareness to notice that this doesn't feel right, or yeah, they're holding their breath. Why are they doing that? And am I going to just ignore it because they said yes, so we're going ahead?
This is where I could see how an examination and understanding of the wheel of consent would come in to be helpful for, well, how the hell am I supposed to know if I'm dominating or if somehow I'm perpetrating?
Yeah.
And then asking oneself, who is this for?
Yeah.
Yeah.
How would you? What's your answer to that question? How do you know the difference?
Well, first, if an individual is already asking that question, then
that's a good sign.
Good sign, right direction, right?
Yeah.
Where if somebody is absolutely confident that they are always in the right,
Yeah.
and I start to,
yeah.
I know that for me, that when I'm topping with rope, because I do enjoy letting out my more monstrous id out when I'm playing. Not always, sometimes. And that is when I need to question myself. I want to play with dominance. I might want to play with the animalistic. I might want to play deeply in my shadow.
Mm-hmm.
How do like any human, I have the propensity for profound evil.
Yes.
Because the Milgram study is.
Yes. Yeah.
And so I do find myself asking, and this is, okay, speaking of trustworthy, when I'm in that mood, I need to find the other that is skilled at holding their own.
Yeah. That's what I was going to say. Part of it is knowing who you're playing with.
Yeah. I would never go there with somebody who's new to rope or new to kink or new to having agency as a human.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
The analogy that I've made when I'm particularly in that mood is that I need a Merriweather to my Muhammad Ali.
Yeah.
I need somebody who can step in the ring,
Yeah.
who is can hold their own in
Yeah.
terms of their desires and limitations. So if I'm in that mood, I get really hyper vigilant
Mm-hmm.
about who am I having a conversation with, because there's a
Mm-hmm.
certain point for my topping and rope that I'm also letting go to my own
Mm-hmm.
shadow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And going there with somebody who, sure, somebody could say yes, let me experience that. And
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
In the practice of the wheel of consent, and the wheel of consent is a practice. We talk about uh, if it's a practice for two or more people, so you got to have other people to play it with. And we talk about building up gradually so that you gain the skill both to speak up for yourself and to notice your partner and stuff. So you start with short turns that are not particularly sexy to you, and it gradually goes from there, because if you if you can't um, if you can't speak up for yourself when something simple is happening, it's going to be that much harder to speak up for yourself when something complex is happening.
indeed,
Yeah.
indeed.
And we all have places in which we don't speak up for ourselves. So again, it's not because you're broken, because you're human.
Yeah. In fact, we spend our first few years with absolutely no choice over the matter
Yes.
around. I mean, if I'm an infant, do I, really want my diaper changed in the
Yeah.
moment?
Yeah.
Like, why?
Yeah.
There's a couple of comments that have
Great.
come in, and folks, I'm not ignoring you all. The conversation's so fascinating. Oh my God! So let me go into the comments here, and somebody said, superstars today, yay, and yay, and the same individual said, just bought your book yesterday. Total coincidence.
Thank you.
Yeah, and another question, let me see this. If you're playing with a new partner who isn't familiar with these concepts or approaches, are there useful prompts or ways to help them utilize their own agency when negotiating play?
That's a great question.
So, there I am at an event,
Mm-hmm.
and there's this hottie who's new, and I don't have the time to run them through
Mm-hmm.
the consent.
Yeah. I think, well, that's a really common question about the wheel of consent, because some people think that, well, now I have to teach them the wheel so that they get it. No, you don't. If you have more skill at negotiating and coming to agreement, it's on you to use those skills with a new person that doesn't have the skills. And you don't have to explain the wheel of consent or anything. You just need to be very careful that you are moving slowly and gradually. So if there's a hottie that I want to play with and I don't know his current skill level, his or her current skill level, I'm going to ask or invite something fairly simple and short-lived and see how it goes. And that if that goes well, then I'll ask for something a little hotter or a little longer or a little more intense and see how that goes. I'm not going to jump into a big scene with somebody that I don't know their skill level. Certainly with rope. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And how we do this in the practice of the wheel of consent is called a 3-minute game. How do you want to touch me for 3 minutes? How do you want me to touch you for 3 minutes? And you're taking turns. Or the original version was, what do you want to do to me for 3 minutes? Oh, hell yeah, I can think of some fun things. Or what do you want me to do to you for 3 minutes? 3 minutes is kind of short for time, but it's not impossible.
It's surprisingly long too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
The 3-minute game. Love that concept. Now, where can people find the 3-minute game if they want an initial intro to it?
You can look on YouTube, put in 3-minute game, and it'll come right up. It's me. It's about, I don't know, it's a few minutes, and it's in the book, and it's also on some free downloads on my website at bettymartin.org. Yeah, and there's on my website too. There's a 8 hours or so of free video that walks you through the whole thing.
In the 3-minute game, and I think it's absolutely genius.
It's genius. I did not invent it, but it's genius. Yeah.
And it works so well with the wheel of consent. To make this relevant for Shibari's study, for those of you who are doing the 3-minute game, you can phrase it as, you can just put the rope in there. So what was the phrasing for the 3-minute game?
Was, what do you want to do to me? So you could say, how do you want to tie me? And then how do you want me to tie you? So and then you take turns. So I'm asking you, how do you want me to tie you? And you're asking me, how do you want me to tie you? So we have that exchange. And then how do you want to tie me?
What if we rephrase this?
Okay.
Yeah. How do you want to use rope with me?
Perfect. Yes, thank you.
Right?
Yeah.
So, because I don't want to assume for who's topping and bottoming, right?
Well, the thing about the 3-minute game is that it creates the opportunity and kind of the requirement for each of you to occupy all 4 positions around the wheel. So if you said, how do you want to use rope with me? You could say, well, I want to tie you this way. Or you could say, well, I want actually you to tie me. But that's not an option here.
Okay.
Because that question will come around in a few minutes.
Okay. In which case, and there are some people who are more casting, receiving fluid,
yes,
and others who are not fluid,
right,
who's casting or receiving.
Yeah.
How can we translate for that?
Well, I think it would be interesting. I'm all about experiments. So
me too.
And the 3-minute game in particular, the thing that's genius about it, and it was developed for a BDSM workshop. The thing that's genius about it is that it puts you in each quadrant where you really can't escape being in that quadrant. Either I'm doing what I want, or I'm doing what you want. You're doing what I want, or you're doing what you want. And so you could if you are not fluid and you don't want to be tied, for example, you're going to say, how do you want to tie me? And they'll say, well, I want to do such and such. You're going to say, nope,
You mean in the 3-minute game, you can say
Yes,
no?
absolutely. You can say nope, or you can say, you can tie my wrist, or I don't know, something that seems innocuous. Although tying your wrist doesn't seem very innocuous. But anyway, so yes, you just say no. And then you still have those 3 minutes to experience what it's like to not be tied.
So the 3-minute game, viewers, it could be the ask is made, and if it's a no,
Mhm.
then the rest of the 3 minutes, let's say
Yeah,
that's 30 seconds, that
yeah,
leaving 2.5 minutes
yeah.
of,
Of nothing, of sitting and noticing how great it feels not to be tied.
and I'm betting that that's a difficult one for folks.
I bet it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How's it worked out in your workshops and with your clients in that?
Um, I'm not teaching rope, thank
Mhm.
goodness, because you would not want to learn rope from me.
In general, though, in general, when there's a
And
no.
when I started using the 3 minute game, um, when I would ask people, what do you want to do to me, or what do you want me to do to you? It was kind of too broad for the way I was working, because I was teaching touch, and in particular, sexual intimate touch. And so I modified the game to be, how do you want me to touch you? And how do you want to touch me? Um, and I
And
forget what the
when,
question was.
oh yeah, and when the uh, how do you want to touch me? And then the
Yeah.
other person says no.
Uh huh.
And I want to know what people's experiences and reactions have been like in that after the no in the 3 minutes.
Oh, it can be very awkward. And when I'm working with clients, a big part of what I do is be with them in their awkwardness, and just accept them for who they are and let them feel what they feel. I mean, that's part of working as a practitioner, is that you're there to help people have new experiences. And sometimes those experiences are challenging. And sometimes those new experiences bring up feelings that you were not expecting.
I
Um,
suppose the
yeah.
awkwardness comes from, part of it is this expectation to respond, do, or expectation
Yes.
that silence and being is not acceptable.
Yes, absolutely. And I think we also have this sort of assumption that the real deal is the action that's going to happen.
Mhm.
And and I would question that. I would say, and what I teach in my workshops is that the real deal, the goal that you're going for, is the process of noticing what you want, and trusting that that's worth it, and valuing it, and communicating it. And that's where all the ahas come, and all the learning comes, and the tears of relief. And
Mhm.
that's where the gold is. You think that you spend just enough time on the agreement so that you can get to the good stuff. Actually, if you're out to learn about yourself, which not everybody is, and not everybody certainly don't need to be all the time, but if you're using the wheel of consent as a practice in self-awareness, the gold is in the noticing, trusting, valuing, communicating. It's not in the action that happens.
In the no scenario, the common reaction is to no, apology, and explain.
Yeah, yeah,
And that is a common strategy
hmm,
and habit, I think more habit.
yeah,
In
yeah.
the 3-minute game, you're not asking them to make a no, sorry, I'm just not
Mm-mm.
in the mood for a.
No, no. Cuddle party rule number 5 is, no is a complete sentence. And I think that's really, really helpful inside of a practice, If I'm asking you to pick me up at the airport and you're saying no, then I consider it, courteous to say some why or some something, But I think it's really helpful to notice that we're not saying do this in every moment of your life. But as a practice, it's very powerful. The no is a complete sentence.
To not be reflexive. And,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And it takes practice.
Mhm.
And you'll have feelings come up about it, and you'll be embarrassed and all kinds of stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, and to say no to touch, can I touch your hand? If that's hard enough, when it's really high stakes and
Yeah.
intimate.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So there is that. It's another thing that I was noticing on this. The no and being, or just being. All right. So, this is what I was thinking. So, fictitious case study here.
Uh-huh.
Okay? So there is two sets of two people. In scene one, or in the pair one, there is a negotiation, and it is the no was not deployed. The person went along in the way that we talked about earlier.
Okay. So,
And
okay, back up just a minute.
right,
I was distracted by a tornado warning, but I think it's not coming this way. And I don't have anywhere to go anyway. So let's keep going.
where are you?
I'm just outside Seattle. Like, this is nuts.
Tornado?
Yeah, this is nuts.
You're supposed to have
Okay.
mold warning.
Yeah, right. Well, mold comes without warning. Okay.
Tornado? Okay,
Yeah.
all right.
Okay, so start over.
Okay,
I'm
if you
here
need to
now.
run, let us know.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's say a negotiation happens, and the person, one of them, did not deploy their no.
Okay.
They went along.
Yeah.
They went along, and then beautiful rope ties and positions happen,
Mm-hmm.
but the person went along.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that was scene one. Scene two is two people came into a conversation and a process, and a no happened, and rope did not happen. In these two cases,
Mm-hmm.
the typical assumption would be scene one is successful rope scene,
Right.
and that scene two was a failure as a rope scene.
Yeah.
And
That's too
yet,
bad.
the
Yeah.
reality is, which one's the successful scene
Mm-hmm. That's right.
and which one was the not successful rope scene?
That's right.
And viewers, if you have experience with playing with other people, right, and you look back upon it, look back on your play history, as I am doing now, I'm sure many of us have had scenes that from the outside look like a successful rope scene, but in examining the
Yeah.
process, it was not.
Yeah.
And in scenes where I've had scenes where I came together with my playmate, and then I was like, I don't have it in me
Mm-hmm.
tonight,
Yeah.
whatever reason, right? No
Yeah.
spoons, whatever. And that scene, I could internalize it as failure of,
Mm-hmm.
except it's not.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
reflect upon, dear viewers, on
Yeah.
opportunities where, yeah. Let's see, we got some questions here,
Great.
and yeah, let's see. How can you find a play partner that is skilled and trustworthy? My question is skilled
Really
at,
good
my question is
question.
skilled at what?
Yes.
Skilled at rope versus skilled at human communication. 'Cause
Yes.
I would rather have somebody who's skilled at human communication and gives a damn,
Yes.
who can only tie their shoelaces.
Yeah. Absolutely. And a great example was that negotiation role play that we did back at the beginning of the call. That even if you didn't have any rope skill, you obviously had skill at communicating and negotiating and finding out what I wanted and being clear about what you wanted, which was really the point. Yeah.
So for this person,
So,
I would start with questioning what do you mean by skilled and skilled at what?
mhm,
Go on.
yeah. Yeah, no, I would agree with that. And the other thing that pops up is you become skilled and trustworthy yourself.
Okay. So the individual follows up with skilled at shibari. I would still argue that,
I totally agree.
yeah, that it doesn't mean a damn thing if they're good at tying but is not engaging in agreement making,
Absolutely agree.
because then the person is not trustworthy.
That's right. That's right.
So skilled at shibari. When I'm teaching rope bondage and shibari, actually, this is what I say, that rope bondage and shibari isn't about rope. The
Yeah.
rope is just a damn tool.
Yeah.
And to give the emotion a weight and significance, a magical significance, that if you know these skills, you can have a great scene.
Mm.
So to this person who's asking about how do you find a play partner who's skilled in shibari and trustworthy, what would you advise the questions that they may ask? So in terms of where, I don't know your questioner, I don't know your geographic region, but let's say that you have an opportunity to go to some sort of a rope social or a kink play party or something. Let's assume that you might have access or travel and go to something like Dark Odyssey.
Mhm.
Let's say that they're in that place. How can this person, are there some questions or observation questions they can ask, observations that they can make? And they said shibari, but I'm wondering, questioner, do you mean somebody who's experienced at bottoming, skilled at bottoming, or skilled at topping with rope? Because sometimes people assume or skilled with shibari means
Yeah.
that you can do the tying, but there's also skilled
Yes.
with receiving.
Yes. That's right.
So what questions can this individual ask or observations they make of people?
I'm imagining myself like at Dark Odyssey in this huge gymnasium with the scenes going everywhere. It's just great. And um, yeah, I don't know. I'm not a regular player in the scene, so I don't know that. But I do know that I want to see somebody, if I'm interested in somebody tying me, I want to watch them at work first, because then I'm watching for those agreement making skills and those caring skills and those, which are far more important than what they do with the rope. Yeah.
A thought around the skill is, one's shibari skill is not about how many different ties and positions you can do, but how do you accurately assess your own inventory of skill?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
So let's say that the communication skills are good. Let's assume for that. Uh, it's one thing to do, say, 25 different ties orally or adequately versus doing 3 ties really well. Right? Because then I know that the 3 ties that I can do really well, and because rope, the nature of how it is, I mean, it's like Legos. You can
Yeah.
combine it in all sorts of different ways.
Yeah.
Can one, if I know that I'm solid with the 3 and maybe not so with the other 22, can I do it? It's like the scene that we were first role playing. I need to assess inventory of what are the solid skills I have now to deploy. So don't
Yeah.
mistake the visual complexity of somebody's finished tie with skill of being with another human.
Oh, hell yes.
I think that
Hell
happens
yes.
all too often.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we may have actually frustrated the individual asking this further. So
Yeah.
here are the questions that I might ask if I'm, say, at kink event, right? And let's say I'm looking to bottom, right? Um, I might have a conversation with the person who I'm approaching about what is it about Shibari that you like?
Mm.
Why? Why
Mm-hmm.
do you
Mm-hmm.
engage in Shibari?
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah, that's beautiful.
yeah, and and this is one about like uh, about if I wanted to go a little bit deeper, I might ask the well, tell me about a Shibari scene that didn't go so well.
Mm-hmm.
How did you handle it or recover out of it?
Yeah.
And if a person says, well, I've never had a bad scene,
Uh, yeah. Yeah. Oh, you forgot the most important question. Do you think I'm hot?
if you think I'm sexy, right? Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah, totally. On that.
But
Oh,
that's I really like that question because you want to know what it means to a person, or at least I would want to know what it means to them. And also, it's going to reveal something about how they're approaching it.
yeah.
Yeah.
Or maybe it's the why me,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Because the example of the exhausted new top,
Yeah.
the why her,
Yeah.
people were looking to get a notch in their belt with a
Mm-hmm.
popular person.
Mm-hmm.
So in a sense, she was being exploited.
Mm-hmm.
Um, oh, and they said, "Good, good." Oh, this is. Oh, thank you. Good, good, good. Thank you. I feel like there should be some sort of Midori certified practitioner. Oh, my God. Oh, thank you. You know, maybe that is the Betty Midori weekend.
Yeah. Yeah. But that sounds really fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, here's another one. A very serious one. Where do tornadoes fit into the wheel of consent?
That's a good question. I don't think they do.
No, it's the wheel of consent gets blown away.
It's just like the whole thing goes.
And then a house lands on a witch.
Yeah.
Oh, so we've got just about 10 minutes left. So, dear viewers, this is your opportunity to share your questions. Quick, quick, quick. And while you're putting that in, are there some simple, fun homework? I mean, we've been going deep into the nuance as I always do in
Mm-hmm.
Consent Dojo, but is there an actionable, a fun homework, something that you would like them to be doing to develop this practice of agreement making or engaging in wheel of consent or something?
Yeah, I would go back to the 3-minute game.
Hmm.
What do you want to do to me for 3 minutes? What do you want me to do to you for 3 minutes? And take turns asking each other those questions and negotiate until you're both happy, and then set the timer for 3 minutes.
And be
Remembering that
comfortable.
you can change your mind at any time. You can say, I thought that was going to work, but that doesn't actually work. Or, oh, yeah, would you go deeper? Oh, yeah, now would you move down? Yeah.
Nice. And that is entirely applicable to rope, my dears.
Yes.
And you can find this on YouTube. Just put in the 3-minute game or go to, what's your website?
BettyMartin.org.
Great. And I assume you're on social media.
Yeah, I'm on Instagram, I think, Dr. Betty Martin. Yeah.
Great. And I'm also available for further discussion every other week or so. I host office hours in my Patreon. So swing by patreon.com/Planet Midori. And social media is all Planet Midori. But swing by the office hours because it's open discussion on that. We can go into this further. And I'm getting Betty over to my Patreon to talk more about this.
Mm-hmm. It's going to be very fun.
Yeah. And you've also helped out with the Kink Informed certification with the Sexual Health Alliance, for which we are grateful.
Oh, yeah, that was fun too.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I said, any chance to talk to you, it's going to work for me.
Hey. All right. Dear, oh, hold on. There's one here. How do you advise, quote, minding the gap, unquote, between where you are and where you want to be? Respecting the current state of no while working towards a yes. Ooh, good one.
Ooh, well, it sounds like that question. It sounds like the person believes that a yes is a better answer, and they should try to get to yes. They should try to get from their no to their yes. And my experience is kind of the opposite of what a lot of people will say. A lot of people will say, try to stretch yourself and, fake it till you make it. And I think that's a terrible advice. What I would say,
So you make it is great for public speaking.
yeah, that's true. But I think what's more important is to really seriously listen to your no and abide by it and trust it and speak it. Because then you become trustworthy to yourself. And then you will trust yourself, and then you will automatically relax and become more curious because you have the skill to say no or stop. So I think oftentimes people are saying, well, I should be open to more things than I am. No, you shouldn't. You should be honoring your no, and the rest of it will take care of itself.
Yeah. Same thing with a slight different phrasing for me on that. Minding the gap between where I am and where I want to be, respecting the current state of my no while working towards a yes. I would interpret that as working towards my internal yes.
Mm-hmm.
And the internal yes is not the scene that scene or experience that is a should, but
Mm-hmm.
the internal yes is a do I have agreement with myself? In other words, the self-trust, trustworthiness.
Mm-hmm.
Am I a yes in this no?
Mm-hmm. I mean, am I
Internally,
yet
am I sure, solid, confident, and in
in your no?
agreement with my no?
Yes, actually,
So
I agree.
so
I
then
also,
it's
yeah,
an internal yes.
yes, I agree. I think there's another side of that, which may be kind of what they're asking, is finding out it, finding out what you are in fact a hell yes to. It's not like, oh, well, I should like this. That's the wrong question. The question is, what is it that you actually do like? You actually do want? And that was the question we had earlier that we actually didn't answer. But I think a big part of it is slowing down and just giving yourself some time and space.
And I would add to that, if it is that you want to figure out what your hell yeah, or even, ooh, that looks interesting, yeah, is not focusing on the knots, not looking at the positions or the technical or the tools. But the question that Betty and I role played earlier was, how do I want to feel during and after our experience?
Yes,
And
absolutely.
what are the skills that we might have, or resources we have that we can get to that? How do I really want to feel?
Yeah.
I've had this experience where I was feeling all like beforehand. I was all planning for like a grr kind of scene, and then got to actually no. What do I want to feel? I want to feel silly and light and happy because the world has been dark.
Yeah.
And by accessing the how do I want to feel, and then finding an overlap with, is that where our feels can overlap? And based upon my inventory of, or your inventory of rope skills, what can we deploy to make those feelings possible? So to minding the gap internally, the question is, how do you want to feel during a potential during and a potential after?
Yeah. Beautiful.
Oh, ooh, this brings us right up against the time. And to the viewers live and viewers later, I thank you for joining us. And this is available free and viewable, so please tell all your peoples about it and all the previous episodes. Betty, thank you so much for joining us. And I might bring you back on because the quality of the conversation is so good.
You are welcome. Thanks for inviting me.
And for all of you, thank you for joining us with the Consent Dojo for Shibari Study. And may your life be full of joy and passion. Until next time.